Tell me about your growing up experience.
Well, I was born into an NFL family. My father, Freddie Scott Sr., played 11 years in the NFL with the Baltimore Colts and Detroit Lions, and 1 year in the USFL with the Los Angeles Express. And so growing up, I sort of bounced around from city to city. I didn't actually finish school at the same school until the eighth grade. I'd always start in one school and then finish spending my summers in Miami with my grandparents. So I was always the most popular kid in class because everybody always wanted autographs. I'd have birthday parties on the football field and go to practices. And so you had the perks of the NFL life, but we also experienced challenges in our family, just like most people can relate with as well. And so we had both the highs of success in the NFL as well as the lows of just the issues that can come up in family.
What were some of the lows that you experienced with your dad in the NFL?
Well, being a young athlete, being exposed to a lot of money, and learning responsibility and accountability and money management, just the natural challenges of women wanting to be a part of your life that's not your wife, or being able to be the father and mentor and role model within your own home. And in fact, it was difficult for my father because he grew up without a dad in his life. And so he didn't have an example really that he could reflect on as to this is the way a father should be in the home. And of course that impacted him, and it impacted my mom and impacted me. And so what we try to do is just try to help as much as possible other people realize that the things that they go through in their own personal homes aren't isolated just to them. I always felt like I was the weird one. I was the one that didn't have the family that was right. I'd go to school saying, man, I wish I was a part of that family, when in all reality, most of us could relate with the various challenges that go on in families.
Now, what led you to write The Dad I Wish I Had?
Interesting that you asked that. We are actually here at our church in a midweek Bible study doing the Truth Project, and it was the session on family that I heard the voice of God clearly speak to me and say, write a book entitled The Dad I Wish I Had. That's all I heard, but that's all I had to hear. From that, I knew I was to write on the things and experiences that I had as a child growing up, and the relationship that I wish I could have really had with my father, as well as to reflect on my experience as a youth pastor and working with the youth who have expressed basically what Ephesians 6 and 4 says, fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. And hearing the anger and the confusion and just the pure wrath that some of these kids had as it pertained to their relationship with their fathers. And so I wanted to be able to make sure that these issues are addressed so that people can receive the healing that God desires for them to have.
What did your dad think of the book?
He loved it. In fact, he was the first person that I gave the book to, because a part of the challenge in writing this, especially with the title, people ask me, well, why'd you give that title? Well, that was the title God told me to give it. So I gave the book to my dad first, and he gave his approval. In fact, his acknowledgments and support is right there, the first page there in the book. And it was important to me because the Bible says to honor your father and mother. And so in no way do I dishonor my father in this, but actually he said it actually helped him understand some of the things that were going on in my life that he wasn't even aware of, because he only saw it from the perspective of dad and my mom, but didn't understand the domino effect that it had in his children.
Now, what about fatherhood in our culture today? Why do you think that it's taken such a hit?
Well, unfortunately, according to a recent statistic that I heard from Barna, they said that 39% of children born in the U.S. today are born to a single-parent home. So that's 40% of kids today growing up without dad there. Then you throw on top of that a 52% or so divorce rate in America. We're looking at an epidemic. In fact, that's what Coach Dungy referred it to as an epidemic of men not being in their homes or not given the opportunity to be in their homes. Now, obviously, there's a variety of reasons of why that may or may not be the case, but the bottom line is dads aren't there, and we need to do what we can do to try to get as many men to be engaged and to understand God's blueprint and design for them to be in their families. In fact, I say it like this: every man is either making a mark or leaving a scar. Either way, something's happening, and we need to make sure that we leave the mark that God desires for us to.
Freddie, what is it that makes dads so important?
Simply put, is God's blueprint. God gave Adam the responsibility to reflect his image in the earth. And you can see the blueprint not only in Genesis chapter 1, but even in Genesis chapter 5, where the Bible says in verse 1, it says, God created Adam in his image. And then Adam had Seth in his image. And God's simple blueprint was to make us in his image, in his likeness, and for men to be the ones responsible to share the relationship that we have with God with our children. You see that again in Psalm 78. You see it again in Ephesians 6, that God is clear in men being the ones responsible for sharing who God is, sharing our personal relationship with God, and modeling that relationship to make it easy for any child to know who God is and God's love for them, because they are able to see that modeled through their father.
I know there are going to be men watching this who feel like they failed. What do you say to them?
It's never too late. It's never too late. Even God, in his infinite wisdom and all-powerfulness, still had a son that made a mistake named Adam. And even though that mistake was made, he still loved his son enough to make sure that he bridged that gap with his creation and made that relationship right. It's not good enough for us to acknowledge that a mistake was made, but we also need to be the ministers of reconciliation the Bible talks about, and that's not just in witnessing to the lost, but it's also reconciling your home. Your family needs you, and not only that, more importantly, they want you. And so don't allow whatever happened in the past to be the reason why you stay there. They're waiting for that phone call. They're waiting for you to say simply, I love you. And trust me, you crossing that bridge is a day that they've been asking for a very long time.
Good words, Freddie. How can people get a copy of The Dad I Wish I Had?
Right now, it's hot off the press. You can get it at my website, thedadIwishIhad.com. And we are literally in the process now of getting it into as many bookstores as we can. But literally, this is hot off the press. So the most convenient way right now is just to log on to thedadIwishIhad.com, and you'll be able to click on the book cover and be able to get the book right there.
Awesome.